How can nature's gifts be distilled into powerful remedies that also provide deep physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual transformation?
The herbalists call it the doctrine of signatures. So it's the shape, the color, and also the location where the plant grows are clues to the healing quality of that plant.
Welcome to the Frequency Files. Thanks for joining us as we explore the vibrations, forms, and creations and mechanisms behind them that inform the nature of existence. Ian White is the fifth generation Australian herbalist, scientist, naturopath, and founder of the Australian Bushflower Essences, sharing Australian plant based emotional healing essences globally for over 4 decades. He carries a lineage of herbal medicine into the contemporary world, now specialising in emotional and spiritual qualities of the Australian bush. He's the author of 5 major books and now teaches the bush essences in over 30 countries across the planet. Ian, I'm really thrilled to be able to speak with you today. I've followed your work for a very long time and I've used the bushflower essences as well. So it's a real honor. Thank you so much for making the time to speak with me.
I'm glad you've used them before. That's great. We can have a good chat then, Sarah.
Oh, absolutely. I actually saw you speak more than 10 years ago, when you'd just been making those essences. You'd traveled to different parts of the world. You were in Antarctica and
Yeah.
yeah, and you were sharing about that at Woodford, I think, and I had a chat with you. So it's just really amazing. And I love how powerful your story is and the lineage that you hold from your family. Can we start there?
Yeah. My great great grandmother was a herbalist. She was English Norwegian background. She came to Australia in the 1850s when we had our gold rush to work as a herbalist on the gold fields. And my great grandmother and grandmother and great grandmother were also herbalists and some of the first people looking at medicinal properties of Australian plants. And my dad was a pharmacist, but also a herbalist. So if you went to his pharmacy for, digestive problems, he'd give you a herbal mix. And I grew up just in Terry Hills, which is about an hour northwest of Sydney, and now live next door to my grandmother. And my parents' property and my grandmother's backed onto Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. So, I spent a lot of my childhood with my grandmother, feigning illnesses so I didn't have to go to school, helping her make tinctures and extracts. And, from her, I got an appreciation in the bush. There are all these amazing healing plants.
That's amazing. And what were the steps that you took then to dive deeper into understanding the plants at a scientific, but also an energetic and emotional level? What was the
Yeah.
journey towards that?
Well, unfortunately, my grandmother died when I was 9. She had cancer for many years. She was a very heavy smoker, and she kept it at bay with a number of herbs,
Mm.
Australian plants plus Phyta lacquer and elder. And she went traveling in Europe, got separated from her luggage, and by the time my dad could get all the herbs to her, the cancer had really taken hold, and she was flown back very ill to Australia. So and one of the great tragedies was that very little of her information was written down. It's a bit like the oral tradition of the Aborigines. A lot of that knowledge got lost. There was, I've got a couple of her books and some references and some of the plants that she was working with. But my main memory from her was that in the bush there were all these amazing healing plants. So I went off. I was doing a science degree at university and botany and all those things, and then got very sick traveling in India and on the university holidays. So when I came back, I started to, you know, rebuild my health, started getting into herbal medicine, yoga, tai chi, meditation. And I tried to blend it together in my science degree. And I think I got to my final year and realized what I was really interested in was natural therapies. So I then started, and there was only one full-time naturopathic course in those days in Sydney. And, went back, finished the degree with anatomy and physiology to tie in with the naturopathy. And I was predominantly a homeopath. But then I liked, we got taught, this is in the 70s, and we got taught flower essences. It was only the bark flowers then. I thought, why isn't someone working with Australian plants? And no one was. And so I used to use them in my practice. And sometimes I'd be disappointed and know I had the right remedy. People couldn't see if anything was happening. And then a dear friend of mine I'd shared a house with when I was just doing my naturopathy. By then my practice was well established. He told me he'd been diagnosed with bowel cancer. And he was 32, charismatic, successful in all areas of his life. The last person you would think would have a serious problem. In fact, he grew up not far from where you are in Mount Nebo and an organic property. And so he asked me, because of my interest in meditation, if I'd run a healing circle the night before he was going to be operated. So all our friends came, and there was, directing energy, meditation to him. And unfortunately, the next day, when they operated, they found out the cancer was everywhere and they couldn't do anything. So, I continued the healing circle for him, and he insisted I open up not just for him, but anyone needing healing. He died 6 months later. And shortly after his death, in the meditations, in the weekly meditations, healing circles, I started getting pictures of plants, told where to go and make them up, and what their healing qualities were. And if I didn't know the plant, it would be very nice to be a little caption underneath with the botanic name so I could research it. And I'm not overly visual in my meditation, so this was, quite a different state. And then for next 2 years, I was out in the bush all the time. I was already practicing, and I'd be, making remedies sometimes that morning, and patients would come in that afternoon. They'd all need the remedy I just made, so I could see how it worked, but also the synchronicity showing me I was on the right track as well. And after 2 years, I started publishing information. I'd been giving it after about a year with good results with my own patients, giving it to doctors and naturopaths, acupuncturists I knew to use on their patients, see if they could replicate the results, and they could. So, yeah, and then this is our 40th anniversary of the Bush Essences, so it's been around for a while now.
Yeah, that's remarkable. When I saw that it was your 40th anniversary of the business, I thought, wow, that's like what a remarkable legacy. What have been some of the learnings in building an organization to the magnitude that it is today?
Yes, yeah, it's a long way off from that first remedy to when we have over 20 staff, and the essences are going around to over 50 countries around the world. So it's certainly evolved in that. And I think if you had have got a glimpse of where you're going to overwhelm, you wouldn't even start. But it's at least
Mm.
it's incremental expansions. And I've always loved traveling and teaching, and I think that's been a great growth, by going to other countries, getting my books translated in their language has really helped really spread the understanding and the use of the essences in not just Australia but overseas.
Mm. What have been some of the responses overseas to the bushflower remedies?
Well, like in England, for example, it was a clinic called the Nutri Centre, and it was the main place where practitioners would go and buy remedies. So they'd have, supplements, they'd have homeopathics, they have flower essences. And we outsold the bark flowers, which is the very famous English one,
Mm.
4-1, for example. I've trained teachers in many different countries, and we had one of our teachers in Natal in the northeast of Brazil. She did a study with the university there on children with learning behaviors using the essences. And the results were so fantastic that the Natal state government had her train 400 practitioners and bought the essences for the practitioners to use in throughout the state. So that was quite wonderful, and I've taught
Wow.
in there, and the state government, I've taught a mental health workshop, and the state government paid for all the doctors and people working in mental health to come to the workshop so they could use the essences. Green
That's
Cross
amazing.
is an organization, it's an offshoot of Red Cross.
Oh, yep.
And, one of the work they're doing was in Belarus, which was directly downwind from Chernobyl. And so they had the worst nuclear radiation. And, this is many years after 86 when Chernobyl went up. they would go through Belarus during the year monitoring children for nuclear radiation levels, and the ones with the highest levels would be taken to the Alps in the summer, and they try different modalities, techniques to reduce the radiation. And using our combination electro, which has, five, six different essences in there, it was the most successful thing they've ever found. It reduced the nuclear radiation by 42% in 2 weeks.
Wow,
So, things like that. Yeah, yeah.
that's remarkable.
I teach regularly, around the world, and like last year in Germany and I think it was the Czech Republic, people who were participants of the workshop came to me in the break saying that the reason they were here today, not just in the room but just alive, was because of Waratah, that they were going to kill themselves. Someone gave them the Waratah essence, which is for that dark night of the soul, and it pulled them back from the brink. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's fantastic, and getting letters from people saying similar things, that they gave it to their child or a patient, and countries I've never been to, and just getting that feedback is makes it very satisfying.
Oh, it's nothing short of incredible, is it? It's just amazing. And it's so amazing when it's acknowledged and organizations really back it, like these governments who have said, yeah, we're going to invest in training people to deliver this and get it to people who need it. Like, I just love hearing about that.
Yeah, the federal government in Brazil was looking at implementing what the state of Natal had done, of running out the program throughout the whole country. Unfortunately, then there was an economic crisis, which is very common in South America, and then there was a change of government. So hopefully, it won't, at some point in the future, that might have come into being.
Absolutely. Well, it provides a case study and an imprint, doesn't it, for what's possible
Yeah.
that other people can take and use as a pilot to run with. That's like,
Yeah. And the beauty is it's not very expensive. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and there's no side effects with it. So it's
mm, mm. What is the journey? And I know this might be, no doubt, a nuanced and complex
yeah.
one for people finding the right remedy for them at the right time.
Well, finding the right remedy, like we have, summary sheets of all the 71
Yeah.
different remedies. And I think when someone comes across it for the first time, they think, oh, I need everyone yesterday. So
Yeah.
what we say to people is, what's the biggest challenge you've got in your life at the moment? And then read through the list or the summary of the flowers, which and with their qualities, and which one would be addressing that problem or challenge, and restrict it to maybe three or four. And there's also we have what's called insight cards. So each of the 71 remedies has a card with their photo on it. And so you can get people to look through the cards, and many practitioners say, choose the three flowers you're most attracted to. And people will invariably choose the flowers that they need. And so that's another nice way of doing it. Um, and Yeah, look, my role is to really spread the awareness of what the essences are, and how they work. So more and more people who are going through difficult times can get to know about them, or someone who they're close to knows about them can suggest it to them, so can help them. So really spreading that word, making them more widely known.
Absolutely. And with the 71, is this a number that's continuing to grow, or is there a reason that there's that certain amount? Like, tell us
Well,
about
we
that.
we had 69. The
Mm.
69th one was pink flannel flower, and that was in 2004 that came through. And at that time, it hadn't been seen flowering for 40 years. It grows in the alpine areas, and it only comes after very intense bushfires, very strong temperature, but also needs the smoke.
Ah.
And so that was made in 2004, and there wasn't another remedy came through for 19 years till 2023 up in the Daintree area of North Queensland. And there have been a number of spiritual remedies which have come through in
Mm.
that time, but no flower essence. And, you know, I think when there's a need, an essence will come down to address that need. And one of the qualities of that is tolerance, and it's got to the point, I think, in so many countries, including Australia, that if you're, say, of a particular political persuasion and you say, oh, like I'm Labor, I'm Liberal, I'm Pauline Hanson, whatever it is, it's
Mm.
different to, what your view is, you dismiss them as an idiot.
Yeah.
And in the States, it's now it's part of the way when you meet someone, you state your Republican, Democrat. And there's like if they're a Democrat, it's not like, oh, well, tell me I'm the opposite, but like, why do you like them? Let's discuss it. What is it about them? But it's just like a total dismissal. And
Yeah.
there's many other qualities of collophilum as well, but that was an important one. Sedum is the first remedy which was made in 2024, was made in Corsica. I was there in 23, and the very last day that I was there, came across it, and it's got all the information downloaded about what it was. Had to come back the following year to make it. And part of its quality is to really ground your higher self. So you've got clarity about where you're going, what your direction in life is. But there's also that wanting to be part of a group working for a higher good. It's almost like light workers, if you like, or people who are really focusing on something very positive and coming together and working with others to achieve that. And I think
Mm.
that's a very
Beautiful.
important thing at the moment. And from those 71 remedies there, we make a number of combinations. I mentioned the electro. So, we have 21 different combinations. In the last few years, we've been releasing a remedy which is related to that year. And we call it the 2024, 25, or 2026 essence. And they're released at the beginning of each year. It ties in numerologically what's happening for that year, but also on a spiritual level what's happening. And a lot of people are feeling very strong this year of wanting to connect with other people with similar beliefs and very positive outlooks in the world. So we've put the sedum in for this year as part of that energetic thing of what people are being drawn to do.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I was looking that you've got that. I'm like, oh, I think I'll have to try
Yeah,
it.
so if you add up the numbers,
Yeah.
2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6 for this current year, it adds up to
Mm.
10. And in numerology, there's a 9-year cycle.
Mm.
And so 10 is outside the numbers 1 to 9. So you add the 1 plus 0 and becomes a 1. So this is a universal year 1. And that cycle starts in a year 9. And in a year 9, being a new cycle, it's a great time if you were going to make changes, changing your career, changing where you live, big, big things. Not how many teaspoons of sugar you're going to put in your tea or coffee.
Mm.
And so many people, and if they do make a change, it works out very well. So for some people in the year 9, they got a sense, and seeds were sown of what they want to change. But if they haven't acted upon it, it's really important, like do it this year. Like there's those 2 years which are great, fantastic time to be making change. So we've put in remedies for people who procrastinate. They know what they want to do, they keep putting it off. Or people who've got a sense of what it is, but they feel a bit overwhelmed by it. Oh, that's so, I want to be a vet, but then you've got to go to study 5 years. How am I going to get enough money? And so, we've got a remedy, Kapok bush, which grows again in Queensland, right across the tropics in Australia. And it's for that despondency and resignation, giving up too quickly. It gives that perseverance to hang in there. And we put a number of remedies which are also related to help you know what it is. If you're still not sure, bush fuchsia to enhance your intuition, the collophilum to get very clear guidance from spirit, the sedum so your own higher self is anchored and grounded, so you get that inner guidance. So that's basically what we've put in for into the 2026 essence to help people. Probably our recommendation, take it for 2 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 times during the year to really make the most of the energy available to you this year.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it sounds amazing. I'm gonna do that.
Well, every year, emergency essence has always been our most popular combination.
Mm.
It was the first combination we made. And last year, we had 4 times as many bottles of 2026 going out than emergency essence, the first time ever that. I think enough people were using it, telling their friends, getting these amazing results. And, the 2026 is coming down in a similar way. Yeah.
How interesting. Wow. I'm really curious about your process of receiving the knowledge from the plants and from the inner world and how that works. Can you share a bit more about that?
Yes, often it's being guided in the meditation that what plants are ready to come down.
Mm,
Sometimes it's been walking out in the bush and coming across a plant, and it's like with the sedum, and straight away this is a plant that needs to be done.
mm,
Pink flannel flower. I had about 5 people in the Blue Mountains who told me it's in flower, hasn't been, like they knew of my work and they thought, this is something I should really know about. And, so that many people all telling me, I thought, well, go and have a look, and then got all the information. And
mm.
one of the things when you're looking at a plant, the herbalists call it the doctrine of signatures. So it's the shape, the color, and also the location where the plant grows are clues to the healing quality of that plant.
Oh,
So I mentioned the pink flannel flower. It's got 11 petals, and level 11 is a very strong spiritual number. It's got a beautiful pink center, but also there's faint hints of pink in all the 11 petals. And in color therapy, pink is the love vibration. And the quality that pink flannel flower brings about is gratitude. And there was
mm.
a Japanese researcher called Emoto. And
Yep.
what he did, he would take various waters, from tap water to, waters from a pristine Shinto temple, for example. He would freeze them and then he let them start to thaw out. At that point of thawing out, he would take with his electron microscope photos of the crystalline structure of the
Mm,
ice. And, he found that tap water had very little crystalline structure, but something in a very pristine environment would have lovely crystals. But then he could also transform the water. He would put it in a vial and he'd write a word and wrap it around the vial, leave it there for a few days.
yeah.
So if he had water that he knew had very little crystalline structure, writing the word love around it would transform the water and have this amazing crystalline structure. And conversely, if you wrote the word hate or something negative like Hitler, for example, also,
Mm,
beautiful crystalline water structure previously would now have nothing. And he found that the two words and the two emotions which are the strongest was love, which we'd expect, but gratitude was equal to love. And
mm, mm,
and also it's a lovely remedy, especially for children, because it helps to keep their heart chakras open. The children that are coming in to do a lot of healing with their ability to give love, but getting exposed to some of the more negative aspects of humanity, those little heart chakras close down. So for the children, it keeps their heart chakras open. And for adults, it's not only gratitude, but it's that joy de vivre which so many people have lost. And it's almost like seeing the world with rose-tinted glasses, and things you have been taking for granted, you're revisiting, thinking, oh, that's really beautiful, or wow, that's so good in my life. I, really start to appreciate so many more things and focusing on the positive rather than a
mm,
couple of things which may be not so good in your life.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting. Have you observed any outliers with some sorts of remedies where, oh, most people sort of respond in this sort of way, but these people are responding in a completely different but positive way?
Look, I think we've had feedback over the years about different essences, some insights practitioners, people using them
Mm,
have had, and they've sent it in. And it's made me aware that when I get that original information about the essence, it's almost like a raw diamond. And as people start to work with it, some of the other facets get polished and are more visible. Um, and sometimes the flow onto the physical. Like we have a combination called woman essence. And the key remedy in that is the she oak, casuarina. And the seed of the she oak is exactly the same size and shape as the ovary that women have. And even the markings on the seed are similar to what the ovary has. And, for years I was getting great results with that. And then teaching in England, over a 2 year period, we had a number of obstetricians and gynecologists coming who were saying, Ian, you'll get better results if you add it with another flower called bush fuchsia, which works on the hypothalamus. And they said that those two together really regulate the whole hormonal system for women. And so, from those insights, adding bush fuchsia to the woman essence made it more effective. And about 15 years ago, again teaching in Europe, we had a obstetrician from Athens. She had her own IVF clinic there. It's getting great results with the essences. And she said that she was adding the pink flannel flower to the bush fuchsia and the she oak, and the results are even better. She said the reason she was doing that was in Chinese medicine, the heart and the uterus are connected. And pink flannel flower is such a heart remedy. So she was drawn to add that. So we experimented for,
Mm.
many months checking that, and the results were verified. So we've added it in. One of the modalities I use in my practice is kinesiology. And, I
Mm.
was a Touch for Health instructor and been using, kinesiology for well over 40 years, even before the essences. And, I used to go in the late 80s, early 90s to San Francisco for the annual Touch for Health conference where they have people from all around the world, and I would do presentations. And we had a number of the practitioners there who they'd come up to me and say, "Did you know that tall yellowtop also works on dural talk?" I say, "No," or that one we have a remedy called wild potato bush, which works on heavy metals. And at one of the conferences, a practitioner said, "Ian, I've been getting great results using wild potato bush for lead toxicity." And that led me to saying, well, if it works on lead, will it work on mercury and other heavy metals? And it did, for example, really well. So it's like other people getting those insights, testing them, passing on to me, as
Yeah.
well as all the original information I get.
Yeah, it's like continual co-creation.
Yeah. And also, um, I the flower I mentioned, bush fuchsia, it helps intuition, works on the hypothalamus. And when I was making up, replenishing the what we call the mother tincture, which is the original concentrate, but one year I got a new quality that it really helps you connecting to the seasons and to the land and sense of direction as well. Like people get lost in the bush all the time. It's a great remedy. And it
Mm.
didn't have that quality. And I was really convinced this is something that has evolved in the interim from when I first made it, as opposed to me not being aware it had that quality, because the plants are evolving as well. So,
Yes.
I wrote about that in the, in our, we've had a newsletter going since 1988. And, I wrote in the newsletter about that. And a lot of people, rang in and said, oh, I want to get the new super duper bush fuchsia. But what had happened is the mother tinctures that I'd had before making this newer one had evolved that quality as well as the plant having it. Those original things had absorbed it and taken it on. So you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's still your new one will now have this one. Your original one will still have this quality. And that was a bit mind blowing for me at the time.
Yes, because yes, so many of us have been raised in very linear 3D
Yeah.
ways
Yeah.
instead of it's an energetic matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really curious, what's your relationship been with collaborating or engaging with First Nations elders or communities in your journey?
Interesting that we have probably done more training them than coming back the other way. Like there is a number of communities where they're getting grants and they can, they've got a few options how they want to spend that money for getting trainings. They can do drug and alcohol, domestic violence, the bush essences are some of those as well. And so that's great. Some of our teachers are going to those communities and doing the trainings.
Okay.
Um, and, like from your state in Queensland, we had, I'm not sure if it's Cherbourg, I'm just sort of,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to, but it was an Aboriginal community there. The mayor, who was an elder, they had the another elder, a couple of the nurses there. There was about five of them came down to do the workshop with me because suicide was just horrendous there. It was like the highest rate in Australia per capita anywhere. And it was just devastating the community, the amount of grief and sadness. And it was younger people who were taking their lives. So
Mm.
they came to sort of learn, okay, how can we use the bush essences in the community to help so people aren't taking their lives, but also deal with the grief that's a consequence of that. So that was, fantastic where we're able to do that training to really bring that information because a lot of that knowledge has been lost. Again, being the problem with an oral tradition, like the early white settlers um, in Sydney in the First Fleet, in their diaries, they talked about when, the indigenous people were sick, that they would float waratahs in water and drink the water. And that was in a number of the diaries. And yet, like smallpox, influenza, genocide, very few people remaining that where and that knowledge was not then continually passed down. A lot of it was not lost. So um, yes. Just before COVID, I was going off to Tennant Creek to work with a lot of the elder women there with teaching about the essences. And unfortunately, the that program never got reopened again once COVID stopped and travel was there. So, we're very open to sharing that. And sometimes we'll come across Aboriginal legends about the essences like Waratah or Sturt Desert Pea. And Sturt Desert Pea's case, which is a magnificent remedy for dealing with grief and sadness, I'd been working with it for a number of years. And then I came across some of the Aboriginal legends, which are also about the grief. And one of the areas where it grows is on the salt lakes. And in their stories, they say the salt lakes are formed from all the human tears for hundreds of years
Yes.
falling on the ground. And that's where you get your Sturt Desert Pea, emerging from. So it was very nice that their understanding, their story is linked in with that intuitive and spiritual guidance I'm getting about the remedies. So they dovetail very nicely.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Yeah. Amazing when you see those parallels of the insights that you've gleaned and then you see that mirrored in First
Yeah.
Nations traditions.
There's one of the remedies I work with. We call it in Australia the red lily. It's known in other parts of the world as the sacred lotus flower. And I went into Arnhem Land, and you had to, get a permit to go there or be taken in
Mm.
by an Indigenous person. And the man I went with, Mick Alderton, his family, and he was a traditional elder there, his family had basically donated the land of what we now call Kakadu National Park.
Oh, wow.
And so I went in with Mick and I wanted to make up the red lily. The thing is, it grows right in the water in the billabongs and creeks. And you've also got a lot of crocodiles, 5 meter beasts all in that area. So, I told Mick about the work that I was doing. I wanted to make this remedy. And he said, yeah, I know a great spot you can go. And so while I was doing it, he was off hunting, getting turtles and things like that. And when he watched me and observed what I was doing, how I was doing it, and then making the mother tincture and diluting it down a number of stages, oh, very complicated. Yeah, but that was really nice to be able to share that and go with him into that land. Yeah, he's a very special man.
Mm.
Mm.
Wow, that is really special. With the mother tinctures, do you go and remake them regularly, or what
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the,
every few
yeah,
years. Yep, yep.
okay.
I'm the one who goes and makes it because you need to be in a very balanced state. So if I've had an argument with next door neighbor on the way of going there or pulled over police for speeding, whatever, then I wouldn't go and make the remedy that day. So just so, and like I really want to make sure that energetically everything is at an optimal level. So really trusting I know what's needed, and rather than let someone else go and maybe they're having a bad day and having arguments with their partner or something, and they still want to go and make the remedy. So, you know, yeah, I choose to make the remedy.
Mm, mm, mm,
And it's
mm.
nice to be able to get to some really beautiful parts of the country as well. Because I
And
don't grow the plants, I get them in the wild because, I want plants which have had to have a strong life force to be able to survive. Because, you know, the floods, the fires, things that, plants go through here in Australia to have, be able to grow well, they have to be very sturdy.
yes, yeah. What are some of the things about the plant kingdom that you think are underrated or underknown?
Oh, every flower has a healing quality, for example. Some express it more than others. And I think for
Mm,
people just to appreciate that, I mean, I think people feel better when they go through a walk in nature and walk in the bush because they're picking up some of that energy and vibration.
mm,
Um, and I don't think people spend enough attention. Like in our workshops, we'll go into the bush and take people there. And so many people, oh, I didn't know we had so many flowers, or, like it's opened their eyes of what is actually there.
mm, mm. Yeah.
And like our plants are so superb. Like, I'll spend a couple of years, a couple of months each year in Europe teaching, go to South America and Japan, States regularly as well. And what really strikes people when I'm presenting and doing a PowerPoint showing the flowers is that they're so different to other countries' flowers. Like originally there was that Gone Wonderland complex, and it had Africa, South America, India, Antarctica, Australia. And then gradually there was that separation. We were the last one to separate from Antarctica 30 million years ago. And the plants we had there grew up in isolation. And, we have lots of reds and purple in our flowers, where in Europe it's say whites and blues, for example. But the shape, they say, wow, the shapes are really ancient looking of what we have here, our plants, compared to, most other continents as well.
Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting that ongoing evolution, isn't it? Like on all levels, just like as you was talking about the evolution energetically that a plant's going through. We talk
Correct.
about it with astrology, it's happening with all forms of life.
Mm. And yeah, Australia is quite unique in that we had the first erosion according to geologists, and then that as a consequence the first soil, and it's firmly believed now and accepted that Australia had the first flowering plants, and also we have the highest number of flowering plants. Yeah.
Interesting. How
And
do you think that has an impact vibrationally on the
again, that
healing process?
ancientness, like flower essences, people think, oh, they're really gentle, and yet, the bush essences, the essences here from Australia have got a reputation worldwide for being very deep and quick acting. And I think that's all part of the land here. And because I'll teach in parts in Europe, and like 10 kilometers down the road, either in the First or Second World War, you had, thousands of people dying violently, and energetically it leaves an imprint. Now I know
Mm,
that we've had, a very bad past in the murders of indigenous people here in this country, but fortunately in a smaller scale, and there were so many areas where I go and make the plans where that didn't happen. So energetically it's quite pristine. I mean, I've been parts of Scotland near the border of England where they've had huge battles between the English and Scottish in the 1600s, and it still feels creepy. Still, energetically, it doesn't feel very nice being there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when that you feel that heaviness in some parts of Europe in particular, isn't
I
it?
went to Auschwitz, and there was one area there where it was a special torture place, as if the whole place wasn't torture. And physically, it was like having two magnets where you get pushed in the part. I could not go into that down the stairs to where that room was. It just forced me back. It was like a force field. It was so, and we have essences for psychic protection. We also make them as pendants. I had all that stuff on as well. I wouldn't go there without psychic protection because it's so dark, those places. But
Mm.
yeah, but even then, there were some places like I just couldn't even get anywhere near.
Mm.
And
Wow.
what you're seeing, like I said, I studied numerology when I started my naturopathy, and I've been practicing for, close to 50 years now. And every patient I do their numerology chart. And everyone who's been born this millennium has a two in their chart. And two is all about sensitivity, intuition, cooperation. So you'll find that the people who've been born this millennium generally are far more sensitive than previous generations. And, sometimes you're getting children with three and four twos in their birth date. I've got some friends in Brazil, and their nephews were born on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2002.
Mm.
I was like, so they're
Yeah.
like psychic sponges. So when there is negativity, these people born this millennium are super sensitive to it. And also means they pick up energies of other people very easily. Am I feeling sad, or is there someone here in this restaurant who's feeling sad and I'm starting to pick up on that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's nice to see that there's an increasing awareness on that. Some people have different levels of understanding it, calling it highly sensitive person or something. But that energetic sensitivity, like I was like that as a kid, like
Yeah.
feeling other people's things and like counseling
So
other kids in the playground and things like what is this?
And the remedy we use for strengthening that aura and so that making it stronger, so you don't pick up on all that other stuff, is fringed violet. And for some of the birth dates I see, like with all those twos, think, oh, this child needs an intravenous drip of fringed violet. Yeah. And it's a beautiful flower. It's very small, but it has such an impact, and it's like a double trinity, and it's the fringe. It's like the aura. So, and purple is all about spirituality as well. So, the lovely
Mm,
doctrine of signatures, that flower. Mm.
that's beautiful. And I love you mentioned the psychic protection remedies and need for that. If someone was having pretty acute levels of psychic interference, would that be, quote, enough for them, or would you?
Well, we usually work with a flower called angel sword. Put those two together. So
Uh-huh.
if the aura is open or broken, then a lot of energies can come in, and
Mm,
that happens with severe physical trauma, maybe someone in a car accident. If you're having surgery and you have an anesthetic, a general anesthetic, let's say you're playing a sport and you get knocked out,
mm,
skiing, you crash into a tree, or you get a hockey stick in the head, or head high tackle in the rugby codes, etc. That loss of consciousness can, and drugs will do that as well. Prolonged marijuana use, but especially if you're doing ice and heroin, things like that, will just open up the aura. So fringe violet heals holes in the aura, but angel sword gets rid of energies which came in when the aura was open. So if you're having a person who's having voices telling them to harm themselves or others, it's not their higher self, and that
of
quite
course.
often there can be an entity and energies
Yeah.
involved that you really want to get out of that person and energetically close them off.
Mm,
In fact, we had a
mm.
lot of spiritual healers, and when angel sword was made, a number of years after fringe violet, and they said, oh, fantastic, fringe violet did half the job, now we can finish the job with now that we've got both of them.
Interesting. And did you get feedback from them on what it was like
Oh
to,
yes, absolutely, yeah.
what were some of the things you were hearing from them?
Oh, look, we had people who were, very destructive on themselves, hurting, self-harming, being told to kill themselves, to kill
Mm,
others. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, wow.
yeah, or just feeling very drained all the time as well.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow. Ian, I'm aware of the time.
Yes. So
I
it's
would
been
love to.
great chatting with you. Yeah.
It's been amazing, and this is just, yeah, it's a real privilege to be able to speak with you, and just amazing to hear the body of work and experience and the impact that your work has and continues to have globally is just remarkable. I'm very grateful to be able to speak with you.
Thanks,
Do you
Sarah.
have any parting words before we wrap up today?
Oh, if you haven't tried them, yeah, give it a try because it covers so many areas from learning, relationships,
Mm,
spirituality, so yeah, and it's great that it can't create any harm. There's no side effects, and can bring about, some really great benefit to, yourself or friends and family that you come in contact with. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, they're beautiful. Sometimes I get a hit on a flower that I don't even know what it is or what it's about, and I go and open the kit and there it is, and it's exactly the medicine that I need at that moment.
Yeah. And then, they can go to our website. We've got videos of all the flowers, little information about them. They can go through and look at the different flowers, see which one they're attracted to, or read about the scripture. Oh, yeah,
Mm.
I really need that. Oh, Aunt Mary, she needs that one. And, the combinations are in health food stores, around Australia, and they're readily accessible, or they can go directly from us as well.
Yeah, they're amazing. The travel one is fantastic.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, yeah.
I can arrive in the States, well, more Brazil or Europe. And, it's basically you're traveling on planes for 24 hours. I can arrive on a Friday and can teach a 2-day workshop that weekend with the travel lessons. No way in the world I could do that otherwise. Yeah.
Mm.
So we recommend for that one, take the 7 drops of travel lessons every hour you're awake on the plane. Even if you're just flying from Brisbane down to Sydney, only it's an hour. There's so many factors that impact us when we're on a plane. So yeah.
There really is, and energetically there is in travel. Like I think we
Yeah.
underestimate what it does.
Well, one of our teachers used to be a pilot for Ansett, which was,
Yeah.
been defunct for a long time now. And Ansett got her to do a study looking at stresses for cabin and flight crew. For example, they knew that a steward is more likely to drop something when they're in line with the engine than any other place. And, so engine vibration impacts us. And now on the planes, your back of your head's got a TV screen that the person behind you is watching. So you're getting electromagnetic radiation bombarding you. You've got gamma radiation. You've got, like uh, we've actually got 14 remedies in the travel essence for pressurized cabins you don't digest well, for people take their shoes off on a long haul flight, can't put them on because of all the lymph that's come out because of the yeah. Dehydration. There's so many factors, so we put 14 remedies to address the major impacts on your body and emotionally when you're on a plane.
Mm,
We went
mm.
into British Airways, checking into their lounge, and the woman looked at my card and realized who I was and said, "On behalf of British Airways, we'd like to thank you for your travel essence. So many of our crew use it all the time."
Oh, really?
uh,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. Ian, thank you so much for your time and for the work you do and continue to do. It's an ever evolving, yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. Thanks very much, Sarah.